Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. The playoffs are getting closer in the Americas. The bracket has been officially locked in the Pacific, and some big results going down in the Chinese side as well. But the major discussion point was again 100T versus Laos, but mainly FURIA and what is going on in that team, because G2 Esports making their roster decision for yesterday's game based on a Twitter poll, and even then FURIA had absolutely nothing to say about the demolition job that we saw in the server. Babybay gives his perspective on a number of different moments in that series. Very much into your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Let's get right into it here. So all gamers played FPX, Chinese, Stage 2, lower round 1 in the playoffs, and all gamers, they get the win. So FPX knocked out of the playoffs already. All gamers advanced. Shrimp is making moves. So yeah, FPX, I mean, it wasn't long ago that this team was considered to be a potential force in the Chinese region, but that's fallen off a cliff very swiftly indeed. And all gamers out of nowhere really have actually started to look a little bit better lately. Will they realistically make the run to make it to champions? Particularly unlikely. A team that has put themselves in a more favourable position though now is Edward Gaming. So they're still on the precipice of, you know, look, they're still going to make champions. The numbers look pretty good for them still in terms of championship points and all this, but you know, getting everything locked in has been a challenge for them, especially after all the recent drama. They played Trace Esports and they get the job done. They got over the line. It wasn't pretty, but they got there. The latest was 13-7 to Trace Esports. Big game here for Martin. The Sunset was then 13-10 back the other way. Chichu had a good map here. And then the final map on the Ascent, it was a pretty difficult map here for Kang, really. Like, you know, from his own standards. ADR, like a lot of the numbers, obviously his rating gets absolutely obliterated because he was on the Jet, but it was nobody on the Sova that really got them over the line here. So, you know, 13-11, absolutely brutal series, and I know that a lot of Edward Gaming fans will not have found that one especially fun, but ever since the Simon drama, look, we know what it is. It is the champion's curse. It's not going to change. There was this clip as well that came out. You can just see it here from Kang after the series is over. You know, just the level of emotional difficulty that this team has been going through. Like, they get over the line. They're probably going to be in an okay spot for the World Championship, but yeah, things obviously not looking the same for this team as they were this time last year when they were looking to be an absolute force going into the World Championship. So it's tough for Edward and the Chinese scene, but they do stay alive. And those are the only 4 games played in the first part of the playoffs, and we shall see. Obviously, Edward will advance to lower round 2, but it's not rendering here, but that's okay. And of course, then they will start to play the losers of the teams that drop down when the playoffs get back underway in just over a week's time. So 6 teams main in the Chinese side. The championship points are looking pretty competitive. Wolves are very much hoping that 2 of XLG, Billy or Edward make it to the grand finals, in which case Wolves should have enough to qualify for the World Championship as well. The Pacific concluded looking like this. There were 2 games. RIQ took down Team Secret 2-1, and then T1 2-0'd DFM, which is a pretty big result really. So, you know, DFM go down in the end after showing some recent promise. And again, it wasn't an absolute bloodbath on the Haven, but it was 13-6 on the Sunset and then 13-9 on the Haven. Still pretty comfortable for T1 in the end. They get over the line despite some heroics on the other side of things. So not looking so strong for the Japanese scene after all, and kind of unfortunate for DFM because they did make it, but they made it as the 4th seed. And as we've said, you don't really want to be the 4th seed. But another team that is the 4th seed, surprisingly enough, is Gen.G. So yeah, it's as I say, it's all to play for in this region. The Pacific has been and continues to be so competitive, especially compared to the Americas right now. But Gen.G will be starting in losers round 1. That loss they had to Nongshim, that they were like, oh, well, you know, whatever, it is what it is. But it was actually pretty important, right? Because they're now starting in lower round 1. DFM are also starting in lower round 1. So it's a big challenge for DFM to make it. The other guys can probably still make it on championship points depending on how things go, but it's just so competitive. PaperX are at 15, T1 at 13, DRX at 12, Gen.G at 12, RRQ at 11, right? So, you know, that's an absolute mess really out in the Pacific. And Gen.G, if they want to make it to champions, they're either going to have to, you know, really make a run here and actually try and win things from lower round 1, which is going to be a big challenge, or they've got to hope that some of the top teams actually do make the finals. And, you know, T1, they looked good against DFM, but it's obviously been a bit shaky for them. And who knows, if some other surprise team makes a run and makes it, then Gen.G could be out of there. largely because of that loss to Nongqin, which really set them back because it, ties them up as we see here with DRX. So as we know, all to play for, and Trace Esports now at 8, officially eliminated as well from their intentions because they are at 8 points, but they're out of the playoffs, so they now have no more chance to make it in that region. So that's what's going on in the Chinese side. But let's talk about the Americas because, wow, what a day we had and what a set of games. This was a fascinating one. So Josh RT did this tweet the other day. Who should I start? Babybay, Leaf, or both? Now, we thought that Babybay and Leaf were both scumming with the team. At times, we thought maybe Valin was unwell, but he was okay to play yesterday, and therefore, because Babybay won this by a matter of just a few percentage points over Leaf, Josh RT is put him in. So Josh RT says, it was a filter to get the ambivalent voters out of there. Congrats to Babybay voters. He won by 1%. He'll be starting versus FURIA today. And Babybay says he's in. So, this is pretty hilarious, right? Now, we're going to see comments from Babybay in the coming minutes here when he's talking about FURIA and the fact that they're not as bad as they look, right? But at the end of the day, this G2 team has literally chosen their roster for the FURIA match based on a Twitter poll, right? Like, if that isn't disrespectful on some level, and I've got no problem with that level of disrespect, I think it's very entertaining. But you can't tell me that G2 respect FURIA as competitors and then choose their roster based on a Twitter poll. Not like it really mattered for G2 anyway, but I think you know what I'm trying to say here. So this was hilarious. Now, Leaf might be back, and maybe it's perfect, right? Let Babybay come in, do a killer job, boost his stock a little bit more as well. Presumably Leaf comes back in for the playoffs of the World Championship and all that. Give Leaf a bit more rest, and he seems to be back and able to play again. Then Babybay, give him the opportunity to show up on the main stage. And that's exactly what he went on to do, right? Have a look at this. The FURIA guys are walking in. Babybay with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, absolutely disgusting ace out of Babybay here. Like, you're going to make some of this stuff up. And, what a moment, right? What a moment for him individually. I don't understand how FURIA, allowed that one to happen. But as he says, it's really just happened. First ace on the America stage, another Smeeg 2-0. And this was an absolute demolition job 2-0. Era even tweeted, it was like, damn, Leaf is shivering, right? She's watching Babybay pop aces, and maybe all of a sudden he's going to be out of the team and Babybay's in there full time. I don't think that's going to be happening, but, this just sums up the adventures of FURIA in recent times. This was bad. It was actually really bad, and they got absolutely demolished here. I mean, Babybay was 27 in 19. The map 2, he played the Chamber on the Ascent. Map 1, Corrode was 13-2. It was just over before really it even started. And then the Ascent was 13-5. So, FURIA, they kind of gave it a decent go a little bit, but it just was nowhere near enough. So G2 get the victory. They 2-0'd them. I mean, the amount of rounds that FURIA are winning right now is nothing short of just absolutely shambolic. And I'll share what Babybay has to say about this, because I understand why he's looking at FURIA and saying, look, we actually do scrim them sometimes, and they're better than they look in, they're better in scrims than they look in the matches. And yeah, look, there's obviously real people behind those names that are having a difficult time right now for that franchise. But at the end of the day, it's frustrating for the fans to watch because you just know what's going to happen before it's even happened. And the fundamental thing is, to me, if you're getting paid to be a salaried professional player for something, you're going to get criticized. It is what it is. And yeah, sometimes the criticism goes too far. That's always how things go. And Babybay's going to be, nice to FURIA and say, look, they're better than they look. It would be nice if people were a little bit kinder to them. But, as I say, he says that at the same time as G2 have chosen their roster based on a Twitter poll for the series.
And it's about FURIA. I wanted to say stuff about FURIA, and it's I think people need to chill out a little bit because, they're not doing the best right now, and the circumstances are really unfortunate for them. But I've scrimmed against this team, and they actually play very well in scrims. I don't know what the problem is and why it's not able to translate as well on the actual stage. But everyone just needs to chill out a little bit because these are people's lives, and they are trying their best. They're not sitting here going into the matches they want to throw or whatever it may be. So honestly, people need to be a little bit more chill because these are people's lives. And if I don't know if the FURIA players do read the comments and stuff like that, but it could really break a person down, and you just don't want some bad things happening and stuff like that. So yeah,
100%.
That's all I wanted to say.
Tarek is getting at the idea of VCT Americas turning into NACS, as in Americas just like not considered to be a strong region globally. Not like Americas isn't strong, because clearly like they have strong teams in the VCT. The point is that in NACS, not like they haven't had strong teams, but it's just not. It doesn't have the strength in depth, let's say. North American Counter-Strike doesn't have the strength in depth, and right now the Americas kind of feels that way compared to the other regions around the world. I mean, this is pretty crazy, right? FURIA have played 9 maps. They've won 39 rounds. That's 4 rounds per map they're winning on average. Even if they beat FURIA, they would still be behind any other team. The remarkable thing is here that their stage 1 run, they averaged 7 rounds. Their stage 1 run last year, they averaged 6.7 rounds. So some of the worst ever runs in the history of the franchise league have come out of FURIA. And even MIBR last year, stage 1 wasn't as bad as FURIA are now. So it is, on paper, the worst that any team has ever looked in the history of the VCT, and they've not won more than 24 rounds in a best of 3 since they borrowed this roster, right, when they brought in the boys at the start of the season. So, yeah, very shambolic indeed. The other big game, and actually a very critical one for 100T to keep their kind of hopes alive, really, and get themselves the best seeding they can, is 100T. They played Loud, and this was a fascinating series because they absolutely destroyed them map 1. The Sunset was Loud's pick, and it was a 13-2. And then 100T actually decided to wake up in the series. They won their bind 13-7. Asuna had a really impactful series here, which was good to see for him. And Kess did, when it mattered, make some nice clutches. And the Lotus was a 14-12 banger overtime. Luxo is a scary force on the other side of things. There's no doubt about that. This guy had the backpack on this series. He tried his best, but it wasn't to be. Kess and Asuna really turned up the final map here to get 100 Thieves over the line. And, well, as Asuna says, banger series. Glad we didn't choke another one, right? So that puts 100T in a spot where they've now officially qualified for the Stage 2 playoffs. That's what they had to do, and now for them, because they're not going to have the championship points, we know that obviously G2 and Sentinels have qualified on pure championship points, so in order for them to qualify, they've just got to make the finals of the playoffs, right? That's the goal for them, and you've got to make it to the playoffs in order to make the finals of the playoffs. So that's going to be the goal. These are now how the numbers look, because MIBR have now been eliminated from the playoffs contention. They're not going to be there based on the results of yesterday. Now, because they're on 8 points, they can still do it if, let's say, G2 and Sentinels are the 2 teams that make the finals, then MLBR will qualify on championship points because they're next up. But what if G2 and Sen don't make the playoffs finals? Then, all of a sudden, MIBR are cooked because those 2 teams already qualify on points. So, remarkable how such a strong start to the season for MIBR has turned into a bit of a nightmare, because after that result yesterday, then MIBR are now down at 1-3, bottom of their group, minus 27. There is no way back next weekend, even though they play Loud. So, very much intrigued to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.